I've always been an alchemist, transmuting what remains after destruction, creating something new, hopefully infusing the innocence, love, and light that was lost, building with broken shards that make my hands bleed. Loss doesn't just come from death, but from what was supposed to be and never will. That feeling of grief swells, and then the almost unthinkable question hits. What next? Welcome to the Obliterated Place for all the brokenhearted, a space dedicated to creating something from the unrecognizable remnants of loss in its many forms. A place to witness one another's grief and choose to honor grief through our actions, big and small. I'm Kaye Steinsapir. Thanks for joining us today. Hello and welcome back to the Obliterated Place. I'm your host, Kaye Steinsapir. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with my friend Libby Boyce. Hi, Libby.
Hi there.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Love it.
Your son Cameron is such a dear part of my children's childhood, because they loved all of his shows, Jessie and Jake and the Neverland Pirates and the Descendants. Yeah. It's like, I just think back to them being, Molly and Nate were maybe 7 and 9, that age range, and they used to always sit and watch. That was one of the only things, some of the only things they enjoyed to do together,
It's a good show.
They loved it.
Yeah.
So it's just such an honor to have you here and to have become friends.
Thank you so much, Kaye. It's an honor to be here as well. And hearing your story about Molly, obviously we have a lot in common, and we're both, trying to thrive through a lot of pain and grief.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Tell us, for those who don't know, tell us a bit about Cameron.
Well, sure. I mean, Cameron is my firstborn, my only son. I have a daughter, Maya, as well, who's 2 years, 7 months younger. And Cameron was always a little different. And we didn't really know how until a little later, but he was always very, very moved by music, and we could tell because he had very bad colic when he was a little baby. And the only thing that would stop him, we discovered it after 2 months of hell.
Yeah.
But the only thing that would stop him was really loud music. And
Holly was the same, by the way.
Isn't that
extremely?
I think it's a sign of intelligence.
You couldn't do anything with this baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if people have not had a baby like that, they just don't know.
They have no idea. And I think, that when we talk about pregnant women, we talk about labor. All we do is focus on the labor and not the after, which is hellish for the first few months, right?
Yeah.
You don't get no sleep.
It can
and anyway, it was rough.
Yeah.
But, music was clearly something that calmed him. And he, in preschool or something, they said that they were having a dance extravaganza. And I go to this dance extravaganza with my husband, and I'm like, Cameron was basically the show, and all the kids stood there and picked their nose. And it was like, oh my God, this kid really, really is joyful with dance.
Yeah.
And so we took him into lessons, and of course he stole, he just, I don't want to say he didn't do anything for attention or whatever. It was just in him. It was a very joyful thing, moving his body and interpreting music. And so he was classically trained. He spent 6 hours a day dancing, loving every minute of it. And a lot of those kids in that company were, going out for commercials and going out for whatever. And Cam was kind of interested, and we just kind of threw our hat in the ring, just completely naively. And got picked up by an agent, and he really started booking very quickly, and that's sort of how it went. And we couldn't really, we always said to him, if you're not having fun, we don't do this. This is not something we sought. But it he just led us to it. And so that was his history. But as he got older, he became very philanthropic. We're a philanthropic home. So it's not a surprise, but he was extra, extra, extra. Yeah. And we were exceedingly close as a family. He was all about family roots, his village of people. and just a joyful human of, loved to laugh. He was silly. He had very deep friendships and was incredibly loyal and was incredibly attentive to me, which I love and miss very, very much. Yeah. They say the special ones are the ones that, leave us. And I kind of believe it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more mothers, parents, but oftentimes it's mothers I meet who are in this terrible club that you and I are members of. Yeah. But it's like essential to have one another. The more I meet people like us and I learn more about their kids, I'm always struck by, okay, like you had a unique kid too. Yeah. You had one of those kids.
I notice it as well.
Right?
Very, very strongly. It's just so weird when we talk about them. It's sort of like they had special, I used to say like pixie dust. And I think, there are kids that in their old soul, whatever you want to say, we don't know, hopefully we'll know someday. Yeah. But there's something that is truly special and just a light that
unique
you can't quite
them. Yeah.
put your finger on.
It's amazing. It kind of gives me a little bit of comfort in a way because it sort of makes me think like, well, like maybe there's some reason for this. I don't know. Like maybe it was
destined.
Molly's path or something because, and I did say to John after we lost Molly at one point, I did say like, of our 3 kids, I'm not surprised it was Molly who left us early because she was just so different, not only from other kids, but like from any other kids I knew. Like she cared so much, so passionately about other people who she didn't know and who she did, but and she always wanted to include the people who were left out, and she always wanted to bring them in. As a matter of fact, this is a connection. I think I told you that Molly and I dressed up one year as Descendants.
Yes, you did.
Right? So I was Maleficent and Molly was Mal. Okay. She was really into Descendants. And recently, through the work we do at the Molly Steinsapir Foundation, we had a donation center all last year where people would come in and they would, after the fires, they would get clothing and food and other essentials. And through the donation center, somebody came through, and I had never met this guy who was from the Palisades, and he said, I just wanted to tell you that your daughter, Molly, was so kind to my daughter, who was a year behind her in school. Molly was in 5th grade, and she was in 4th grade. And my daughter was having a really hard time socially that year. She didn't have many friends. And they would stay after school for this program called Beyond the Bell. So I was working. So it's like, this thing where they stay after for an hour or two and they play and do activities. And he said his daughter would come home and she would talk about the really cool girl in 5th grade who wore the purple leather jacket. And that was the Mal jacket. That was the Mal jacket. Oh, wow. And I thought, oh my gosh,
so sweet.
And how sweet, like how much Molly made her feel like a cool girl too,
Yeah.
And she was always that way. And she was like that with like a nonverbal autistic boy in her class. Like, and it was like not even a thing to her. Like that this boy doesn't speak and he has these 2 aides, that accompany him everywhere. And the aides would take her out of class with him because he was calmed by her presence. Yeah. And so it's like, there's just something that's like not.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about
common.
Like, is it destined? I don't know.
I don't know what the right phrasing is around it, But
I know what you mean, and I do think of that sometimes. I'm not sure that it's comforting, but it's not. Yeah. Like it's like in a way it is, because if that is the truth, then I couldn't do anything.
That's what I was going to say.
You know what I mean?
That's what I was going to say.
And then you feel a little better. Yeah. But like I have so many questions about the afterlife and all these things. So, and I don't think there's any, answer that I'll be like, that's it, until I'm there, right?
How can anyone?
Right. And so I don't, but I definitely do feel like there is something about the ones that leave us early that is extra special. or something, right? And I do also feel as though I'm very aware that Cameron has helped a lot of people since his passing around issues of epilepsy and early treatment and assertive being part of your medical team and all of that. Like, I feel like doctors are much more apt to talk about the fact that epilepsy can be fatal. And I've heard that from doctors around the country. And so there is a modicum of comfort in that, because he was so philanthropic, he would want to be sure that he was being used in some way to help others.
He's living, he lived a life of great meaning, and his life still has great meaning. Yeah. And I feel like that about Molly too. It's like, okay, she only had 12 years here on earth, but her life still has great meaning.
Absolutely.
And still helping people. And like I told you the other day, like I shared that someone needed a kidney, and I didn't know this family, and someone who I also don't know, who follows me because of Molly and who's inspired by Molly. It's
amazing.
Gave her kidney to this person. Like,
if we could only have more people spread kindness, right?
I mean, it's amazing.
I
5 years after Molly's passing, it's like she's helping to save someone's life.
Yeah.
And it does make me feel proud and also glad, because it's not easy sometimes, like sharing things, publicly. And you were already kind of in the public eye. I remember sitting and watching with my kids the tribute that they did for Cameron at the end of the show. Yeah. And talking about that, and it was scary for them because they were young. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, how does 100%. This happen? Can you go to sleep? And, all of that. And it's also like makes me think about, because what year was that?
It was 2019.
2019. And Molly was not long after that, early 2021. Yeah. So it was not long after that. And I think about that and I think like, oh, wow, there are people who will come behind me who will have seen me and be like, oh, I saw that and now I'm in this position.
Well, it's funny you should say that because, when Cameron died, I really needed to be around moms who had lost kids. And that's all it was just such a surreal time. And I think I was absolutely manic and out of my mind, honestly. But all I wanted was to talk to other moms. And I remember like reaching out to people like Nikki Mark and people who came before me. Because before Cameron passed, when I would hear about a kid that passed or a young adult that passed, I couldn't even process it. And now that I'm in it, it changes you so drastically and so quickly. And your usual coping skills don't work anymore. It just really is the biggest shake of a tree you could possibly imagine. And so I also think about, and I always reach out to people that I think we have some connection who have lost a child since Cam, because I needed that so bad. And you can't assume everybody needs it because everybody grieves differently. But I do think it's just an olive branch to try to do my part.
It's so isolating in some way, right? Because it's like, this isn't supposed to happen. This isn't. There's
you
that
never
feeling.
think it's going to be you.
You don't think it's
right?
going to be you. Certainly,
No.
You don't think that, and then
it happens.
It happens, and you just. I mean, most of us don't know a lot of people who are in that position of having lost a child, so we have to kind of look around and say, who can help me?
Right. I don't have a best friend who lost a child. I need a best friend who lost a child. Yeah. Who's it going to be? It's very true. I mean, for me, that was really like, I just had this need. And the people that I did meet, it takes you a little while to kind of sift through because, unfortunately, there are quite a few people. And to find people who you sort of have like mind and also who still want to thrive and still want to find joy. Right. Because for me, that was really important. I couldn't, to be Cameron's voice and to be me, I know that he would never want me to shrivel up. And so, you have to find a way to keep on moving forward and still honor them.
Yes, definitely. We met pretty recently through a mutual friend, and I had, because Molly died right in the height of the pandemic, we were having a COVID surge at the time, Molly had her accident, and I did like an online grief group, and I did it for a while, but as I said, there's something that's not the same, obviously, when you're dealing with such intensely, the most intense thing you could possibly ever experience, and you're talking about it on
Zoom,
the computer.
On Zoom.
It was just so hard. Yeah. I mean, I would be like doing the Zoom, and I had Eli who was 4 and Nate who was 10, and I'm on the Zoom and I'm listening to people go around the circle talking about what happened to their child, and I'm beside myself, and then I have to get off and go make dinner, and I've got the 4-year-old at the door, like, Mommy, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm listening to how this poor, person died of a fentanyl poisoning or whatever, and in my case, Molly was the only girl in, the group the child who had passed, and the only actual child. Everyone else was over 18.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
so
different.
I did make like some good connections through that, but I didn't stay in the actual group for that long. Yeah. Interestingly, my husband, who was in it with me, stayed in longer than I did.
Well, you never know.
You never know. You never know. He stayed in it longer than I did, even though he was the one that was like back at work and everything, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
I had, I was just changed so radically from all of this that I didn't go back to practicing law.
And it's pretty amazing how it changes your life, but also how you each choose or feel the need to express your grief. And it can be so vastly different, right? And and you have to respect each other's processes, because, I don't know what the hell goes into processing grief. Obviously, a background, prior traumas, all those things, but it's pretty amazing how different it can be, and yet you still have to live together, right?
Ours were so different. Yeah. We almost, at some points, I thought we might not stay together because it was so radically different, because I was so in need of sharing and wanting Molly to be seen, because she was gone so early. Yeah. And I was like, if that's all there is, like, no, like I can't.
I understand.
So totally. I really wanted to share, and I'd already gone through my own cancer experience, and I had found a lot of meaning and purpose in sharing that with others and helping those who came behind me and all of that. And so I was already kind of in that space, and my husband was incredibly private and not wanting to do that at all. And so just everything I was doing, having, gatherings he didn't want to do. And it was so difficult. And then we come full circle, because just recently with this person who got the kidney transplant, and that was through like just our social media following
and Molly's inspiration.
And so he said, I feel good about going to work today, so I can support like what you're doing, because what you're doing is so important. Oh. Like, so it's like, it's taken over 5 years, and we've kind of come closer to the middle.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, like, I would advise couples especially, is to like respect each other's process, because, because you're not emoting all the time doesn't mean you're not in pain. And like for my husband, no groups, he doesn't really talk about it a lot, but he cycles. He's a cyclist, and if he doesn't ride his bike, 4 or 5 times a week, he goes down, and that's his mental health. And he's got a group of cyclists around him who support him and talk about Cameron, and and he always posts. My husband Victor, he always posts about Cameron. But his process was exceedingly different, and you cannot judge them for how they process. Yeah. And if you do, you're going to fail. Yeah. And I think that's such an important, couples going into this, it's like such an important message, is respect the process, and don't just lean on each other only, because that's not good. No, you need to find other outlets for your grief and pain.
I remember John saying, like, I just have nothing for you. Like, I can't give you anything.
That's how I felt.
He's like, I feel like I am just circling a drain. Yeah. Like, I'm just going around this drain, and I'm just getting closer and closer to being sucked down this drain.
Well, because you look to your partner for strength. Yeah. And in this case, you're not going to get it because you're both going down the drain. And so it's such an important message to just, you have to sort of let that be. And again, just respect each other's process, and don't expect the other person to grieve like you.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't expect us to grieve the same, but it was more like we were we just were kind of at a loggerhead sometimes, you know? It's like And I would feel like, well, why don't you want to come to the beach, and all Molly's friends are going to be there, and I set this beautiful thing up, and, and then like Molly was a theater kid, like Cameron was, and they did a whole mural for her on the side of the theater, and he's like, I don't want to.
Well, and there was
there
was a couple in the group that I was in. I think I shared this with you. Who, the father was just going to all the graduation, all the things that his daughter would have gone through, and the mother was just home, like covering herself she couldn't do it. And there was tension for sure. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm like, I didn't have the covers over, but I wouldn't have been able to go to the graduation and those things. But, had my partner, I would have applauded him for doing it, but there's no way I could do it.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, I guess what we can say to people, like being a few years out, is like to give it time, because you come around to kind of settling into something that's closer.
It's your new normal.
It's your new normal. You know who reached out to us, which was very nice after Molly passed, because as I'm sure you know, especially people who've lost a child are very many times very gracious about like just trying to extend that olive branch. And Fred Gutenberg lost his daughter, Jamie, in a school shooting at Parkland. And in fact, that shooting was on Valentine's Day, and Molly passed February 15th. But we already knew on February 14th that she wasn't going to wake up. So essentially around the same time. And, he was just such a kind person to reach out and say, I lost my daughter too, and talk to my husband. And one of the things that he talked about with us, and it was in those very early times where it's like surreal. Everything, I don't know what was happening. Yeah. I wasn't in my body. I don't know. I was like out of my body looking at myself. But I do remember speaking to him and him saying like about this issue about marriage and how difficult it could be, and how different it might be, and needing to kind of stick together. So I am really glad, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that we have managed. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary this past week. So yay for us.
Very good. And I feel like you stuck it out.
I feel like we've done a good job of we've been through a lot of really tough things, and still like creating a beautiful life and a meaningful life, and one that like I hope our boys look back and they say like our parents still, they didn't shrivel up.
Oh, they will.
They
will. Yeah, they will. And I think my daughter will as well.
I think, part of what's been helpful for us is similar to you. We have tried to do things outside of ourselves to help other people in Molly's memory and through her foundation. And it's been a way for our boys to be part of that in a way that's not as sad. It's like, oh, we're going out and we're volunteering here. We're, we have a whole group of teens that are part of the Molly Steinsapir Foundation Youth Board. And so it's like they can be part of that. And it's interesting because my younger son, Eli, he's only 10, and he has been wanting to come on this podcast from the beginning. Like, I just dying to be a guest. And I'm like, really? Are you sure? Like, oh, fine. Okay. So we recorded an episode.
Sibling grief. Okay.
I was like, whatever you want to talk about, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you anything. But I did ask him the same thing I ask everyone, which is just like, we don't do any prep, but is like, is there anything you would like to talk about or you would like to not talk about? And he didn't mention Molly, but I said, how about Molly? And he said, no, probably not too much Molly, because it's too sad. I don't really think so. But he had written down a list of the things he did want. And on the top of the list was the foundation. Oh, nice. So it's like he has that, like it's
okay under that umbrella.
Yeah.
I understand. That makes sense to me. That makes sense. Even my daughter, and similar, it's a little different because, he was obviously someone with public identity and, so, and they were very, very, very close. However, she didn't want to ever be in his shadow. And unfortunately she was, there was nothing we could do about that other than normalize things as much as possible and make sure she's really part of everything and that we can, celebrate her in every way possible. But I think, since Cameron passed, it's very hard because, she doesn't want to be the face of Cameron Boyce, and I don't blame her. She's trying to make her own way. And I I just think for siblings, depending, obviously they come with their personality and their character and so on. It's just such an enhanced thing, and they're so young already. It's just the biggest trauma maybe is losing a grandparent, right? And I think the sibling experience is very interesting, and I think they all process it differently as well.
My two
gender-wise,
boys,
different,
totally different. By the way, my two kids,
Yeah.
totally different. Nate, very close in age to Molly, less than 2 years, and he doesn't want to be Molly's brother either. It's like, and they go to the same school, and for the first year he went there, he didn't want anyone to know.
Maya was kind of. It was not she didn't want. She just did not want to be the center of attention because her brother.
It's like
died.
I don't want to be the kid who lost their sister. That's it. It's not like I don't want people to know about Molly, but it's like I don't want you to look at me and only see a boy who lost his sister and treat me differently. Which, by the way, they do. They do.
Still. Maya said something recently. She was on a podcast about sibling grief. And she was mentioning Cameron died in July, so it was the summer, and she went back to school in September. And she was really nervous about it because she didn't want to, people to look at her funny or, the whole feelings that you have is like you just don't want to be the center of attention. And she said she kind of walked onto campus and there was a table of girls who were like, hey, come here. And they were like, my brother died too, and and they just wrapped her. And
that's really nice.
And I think that worked really well for her. That broke the ice.
Yeah. How old was she?
She was 17. 17. And so, and she's very mature. Both my kids were pretty mature, but yet, she's a kid. 17.
Was she in high school still?
Yes.
Yeah. So she was going into her
senior year. So but COVID, there was that year was horrible. That year was a nightmare because that's when February the world shut down.
Yeah.
And then no prom, no graduate, all that. It sucked for her. Mm-hmm. It sucked.
In some ways, I feel like it's just been a slow, and sometimes not feeling so slow, just kind of process of craziness that started, with
our kids,
with the kids, and then just we keep going.
That's how I felt, very much so. And I was grateful to COVID at the time. Not grateful about anything related to COVID, but just that we were home and that we were in this little bubble. I needed it.
Yeah.
And so for me, that helped my grieving process. And we were thrown together, and that was it. We couldn't escape. Yeah. And I think that was helpful for us.
When did you know Cameron had epilepsy? Was he?
Well, he had his first seizure when he was 16, January 1st, New Year's. And of course, he'd been up really late with his friends. And, one of the triggers for epilepsy is lack of sleep, dehydration, and stress. And so he had it, it's like 6 a.m. in the morning. And he had two friends that were sleeping on his floor that had slept over. And one of them ran in and told me and Vic, and we ran in and just sort of saw the aftermath, where he was completely out of it, didn't really know what year it was, didn't really know, took some water and poured it all over himself. We didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
And so my husband picked him up and took him out to the kitchen. Of course, we called 911 and they came. And first they take him out to make sure he's not being abused, which, that's just the way it goes. Yeah. And then once they find out that that's not the case, he did say, the EMT did say it's probably a seizure. So we sort of had a little bit of a heads up. But, for me, because I work, I'm retired now, but I worked in the homeless field and I read lots of medical charts of people who are unhoused. And I saw so many people with seizure disorder. It didn't set off major alarm bells because it seemed like something pretty common. But, still obviously really concerned. So he went to the ER and they, did an MRI and they confirmed that he had seizure. And they told us that he could have one free seizure in life and not be epileptic. But if he had another, he would be diagnosed with epilepsy. So a year went by and he had another, probably about 10 months later. And he always had them in his sleep. So, that's nocturnal seizures. And we never saw them because obviously he slept in his own room. And But when he had the second, they diagnosed him, and he went to a Kaiser neurologist. And, we didn't really get a lot of information. We sort of got a brochure and take this medicine, and which I regret. I don't know that we could have saved him had we had better orientation or were more armed with information. But now I encourage anybody who gets a new diagnosis to really be aggressive and assertive about, managing, learning.
Is that usually around the age that people are diagnosed?
Well, no, it's interesting.
I would have thought
I've
it would be
learned so
earlier.
much
I don't
about
know,
epilepsy since it's happened.
I don't know that much.
I didn't know anything
I'm so
before.
curious to understand.
Well, some people are born with it,
Yeah.
but anybody can get it throughout their lifetime. And actually, it's most common new diagnosis with elderly because brain trauma can cause epilepsy or seizures. And so if your grandpa falls down and goes boom, they get a brain trauma, then they start having seizures. So actually, it's most common with elderly. However, it is also pretty common in teenage years when your hormones start changing.
Oh, is that what it
when
is?
you become
Okay.
vulnerable.
All right.
And so, at 16 is when Cameron got them. He only ever had 5 seizures, and the 5th one killed him. We never knew that he could die from epilepsy. Never even. I thought, he's safe. He's in his bed, so he won't fall and hit his head if he has a seizure. Right.
Yeah. Were they always nocturnal?
Always.
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 Yeah.
And so come to find out that nocturnal gives you a higher risk for death. Sleeping on your stomach gives you a higher risk for death for people who have epilepsy. So, all these things that no one told us, we just had no clue whatsoever.
Crazy, that they don't provide that information. It seems like
this is why we tell everybody to go see an epileptologist because a neurologist may specialize in epilepsy, and that would be called an epileptologist. Now, if you have heart disease, would you go see a podiatrist or would you go see a cardiologist? You know, and that's a pretty black and white example. But I'm just saying, it is best to go to the highest level of specialty you can.
Yeah.
And, in hindsight, 2020, I would absolutely have him with an epileptologist that I was very comfortable with.
Right.
We were not with a neurologist that we were comfortable with. And I had talked to Cameron about switching, and he was kind of like, I'm okay, Mom. And, I kind of know when I'm going to have a seizure. And I lay down, and it's like, well, now, again, in hindsight, that was a risk factor that he could sense them.
Oh.
So, you could beat yourself up all day.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know, had we been completely armed, that it would have changed things because none of us, he wouldn't have allowed us to sleep with him.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Of course, right? He was 19,
and
right?
we would have put all these barriers. And he was 20 and he was living his life. And, so that's the really hard part is thinking back. But you can't go there. You can't put that guilt on yourself. And, would I have done things differently? Of course, I would have done things differently. But I could say that for a lot of things in my life. And, you can't rewind the time.
I think as parents, every single person I know who has lost a child grapples with guilt no matter what happened.
No matter what.
No matter how they died. No matter what it is. Because it's I think on some level, at least for myself, it's what we've struggled with. It's we failed at our most important job.
Exactly.
It's our job was to keep our child safe, and she wasn't safe.
And you feel like a failure to some degree. And listen, cognitively that that's not even, not fair to yourself.
Of course.
That. But intellectually, but you also can't help but feel that way because you failed at the one job that you are born to do.
I feel like it's innate in some way, right?
Yeah.
As parents, especially as mothers. It's I carried this baby.
Yeah.
I wanted this baby so much. I'd lost a pregnancy, before. And I had such a hard time, and so it's
As
just
did I.
and Colin Campbell, one of my guests, was saying, it's you spend all of your life, taking care of them, making sure they brush their teeth, making sure they're all right, all the things. And then just to have it all of a sudden, that's over. And you did, it's just.
It's so mind-boggling. It's just, you cannot imagine that a life just ends like that. No. And it's the one that you were supposed to keep safe. So it's guilt. It's definitely racked with guilt. And I had to very much deal with that. But I also, had to really talk myself off that cliff because to what good?
No.
To what good?
My husband was the one that experienced that more than me. Not that I didn't, as I said, but it's just like, he was the one going back and second guessing everything and trying to think what he could have done and wishing he had understood, the situation better and all of these different things. And I remember saying to him, Molly, just would not want you to do this, at all. And it's just also not good for you or for me or our boys either,
But you can't stop it. You really
stuck
can't.
in this. I guess sometimes you just have to
get through it,
muscle through, and maybe over time it gets better.
It does. It definitely does. I mean, I think, again, it's just everybody processes things differently, and how we manage that and how we manage our grief. And they talk about time healing it doesn't really heal. No. Okay. But, time does really help, and gives you more perspective, and it's a new normal that you just have to contend with and decide, are you going to sink or swim?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember that for months, just functioning was very hard, right? Yeah. Just doing anything. Yeah. I couldn't go to a grocery store. I couldn't drive without breaking down.
You just feel like you're in this alternate reality. It's a very strange feeling. It's almost like the air is really, really heavy and you've got concrete on your feet. That's how I felt for the first month. And I kept asking all of these people who had lost a child, how long does it last? How long does it last? It's well, forever. I mean, really, forever. Yes. It does.
Yes.
But I was kind of trying to understand, how long am I not going to be able to function?
Right, yes. That was Elizabeth Koppel, who we both know.
Yes.
Who was a guest, too. And I was the person, I think, that she met first.
Yes.
Because, her cousin was my neighbor, and put us in touch. And so I think I might have been the first person who'd lost a child that went to her and met her and everything. And that was what she was trying to figure out. I was like, how long am I going to be like this? And how do I function as a not normal, but as a functional
you
person?
Don't get your life back.
You don't. No.
You don't. It's life-changing like nothing else, right? Yeah. Even beyond having a child, losing a child is more life-changing, I think. And you really have to contend with so much emotional baggage that it's just you never are the same. You're just not. And some people like you never went back to work. You've changed your path completely. Nikki Mark changed her path completely. I think Elizabeth Koppel, so many people, changed everything because it knocks you to your knees and you are never the same person.
That's why we call this the obliterated place, because you're obliterated. Everything around you is unrecognizable. It's what is this place? Where am I? What do I do here?
Yeah, I always use the word gutted because I just felt so gutted, like my whole internals were just. Yeah. And there's so much that that goes into this. It's just your daily life is completely different.
I know.
So yeah.
And what was it like, given that Cameron was a public person?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that play into everything?
Pros and cons. Yeah. I think, we all of a sudden were thrown into the spotlight, and, prior to Cameron passing, I couldn't speak. I spoke publicly about work, and I could, but once in a while he would pull me into some video thing they're filming, or I don't know. He would pull me in, and I just I couldn't even talk. And I don't know what happened. I think I just said, Cameron, take his voice. Yeah. And so I really had to self-talk myself into the interviews. We were on Good Morning America within a month, and and my goal in that was really to be authentic and just to not be nervous, and just to really just listen to the question and answer it with authenticity. And I've become pretty, not so bad at it anymore. And I think, I give thanks to Cameron for that, because like I said, I was so nervous before in front of cameras and so on. But, the cons really just were it was so in everybody's face, and we were just hearing about how much was being talked about. And at first, of course, I was Well, I don't want anybody to ever think that my child was a child star who went, bad, because it couldn't be farther from the truth. Okay, it was a polar opposite. Yeah. However, people make shit up, right? I mean, they do, and
or they make assumptions.
Oh my God!
Whatever.
So I was worried about that, and so our publicist had said a medical condition at first, and I said, no, tell them it's epilepsy. You just tell them everything. Yeah. Tell them everything, because we'd never really talked openly about epilepsy. I don't know why. I mean, why would we, I guess? But also there's a stigma with epilepsy, which I think we were also dealing with, and in his jobs and things had to really think about that. But, I just laid it all out. And so I think from the perspective like you talked about with Molly is like you do as a parent, not all parents, but many think, oh my God, my kid's going to be forgotten. Yeah. I felt that way a lot, but yet quite the opposite, because he is still beloved.
Yes.
And so that's a pro for us. Yeah. And to see yesterday was his birthday. And for me, that's the hardest day. It's not his death day. It's his birthday. Yeah. Has much more meaning to me. Yeah. And to see all the love that came out of the woodwork for him, it's overwhelming, but it's also incredibly life-affirming for him. Yeah. And so, pros and cons, I would say, but we got thrown in really quickly, and I think we did well. And we could have bombed.
And if you did, whatever.
Yeah, whatever, right.
Who would care at that point?
Exactly, exactly.
I kind of feel like that the way I am now, like in this new reality, I'm just like, I don't care if I do a podcast and it is not good or nobody listens to it. Right. I don't care. Yeah. I'll just try anything or do anything, because it's like the worst has happened to me.
Right. Exactly.
I don't care.
I have a lot of that as well, but also like menopause and getting older. I don't care either. It's like,
you reach that point.
You reach that point and it's all rolled up.
I mean, mine was accelerated because I was diagnosed with cancer at 39, and it was like, okay, you're in menopause now, even though I was like breastfeeding and I had just given birth, which was crazy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, talk about the work you've done through the Cameron Boyce Foundation.
Well, we immediately decided to do the Cameron Boyce Foundation because what we initially thought was, oh my God, he's doing all this. He was doing Wielding Peace, which he had just really started, which was a campaign to, on gun control, about like pick something up artistic. Don't pick up a gun.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And so he was taking pictures of people. He was having pictures taken of people with whatever their outlet was, and, kind of holding it like a gun kind of thing. And anyway, so he was doing Wielding Peace. He was very involved with the Thirst Project. He would go to all the not the March of Dimes, but the ones where they take the kids, anybody who's terminal.
Make-A-Wish or something?
Make-A-Wish. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of that. He was so involved with all those things. So nice. He was involved with one in Santa Monica, Windows, something or other, and, children's cause, anything. He was so involved. So we were like, we have to keep his philanthropy going. Yeah. So that's initially what we thought. And then his best friend, Karen Brar, who was in Jessie with him, they've been best friends since they worked together. And he was like, shouldn't we be doing something about epilepsy? I was like, maybe, yeah. Anyway, and so we sort of slowly brought in epilepsy, and then it all turned to epilepsy because obviously that's what killed him. Yeah. And so, and that was the right thing. It just, again, you needed the time to kind of process it, and, trying to make Wielding Peace a go without him.
Right.
Trying to make... we've been a great partner to Thirst Gala, the Thirst Project since Cameron passed and so on. So we've continued that. But, we don't have the same impact as Cameron had. Right. I mean, And so what we really needed to focus on was epilepsy. So we have been very focused on epilepsy awareness, arming people with information, especially when they're newly diagnosed, especially when they're young adults, because there's so many risk factors that, the doctors, I'm sorry, they're not telling them about. Yeah. And those hormone changes, and kids go off to college and they're going to drink and they're going to stay up late and they're going to, do all the things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Now, how do you say don't do any of those things? But you need to have a plan for safety, right? Yeah. And you need to let people know your condition so that you have people around you who are, there's so many things that,
I had no idea that this was something that obviously know about epilepsy, but I had no idea that it was something that is common around adolescence.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes sense now that you say that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know from my own cancer experience, and I'm very involved in breast cancer advocacy as well. It's like there's so much we do not learn from our medical team.
Yeah.
We just don't. We have to learn from each other, and we have to share and advocate. And it's wild to me.
Yeah, and
like,
it's very.
How is that the case? But it still is.
I have a lot of thoughts about that. I mean, just from the perspective of, I really think it's the medical community's responsibility to arm you from the get-go.
It's like they forget. I mean, are they in their heads?
I think.
Like, what is going on?
Well, for us, I think it relates to a lot of doctors don't want to be alarmist around you could die from this. And I understand that. However, I feel like if you change that to empowerment, meaning you share that this can be very dangerous, that you do it in a way that's like, that's why it's so important that you take your medicine at the same time every day, that you make sure that you're well hydrated, that, whenever you swim, somebody's nearby, empower people with that information so that they feel like they have some control. And to not tell them, I think, is completely unethical. Yeah. And so that's something we're pushing now with our foundation is like, how do we work with the medical community to really push this? And I know that a lot of doctors have told us that they didn't used to tell people this. And now since Cameron died, they use him to tell. And I'm like, use him to tell their story. That's what you need to do. Yeah. But, buck up and do your job kind of thing, right? And so I have a lot of feelings about it. And, people always say, why don't we do legislation? It's like, because it's unfunded mandates and then they don't do it anyway. So what can we do to help them to do that, to further the cause and move the needle? And so, that's one of the things we're working on, as well as just really a lot of awareness. And we've started something with people living with epilepsy to become their own support group, to be vocal within their own community. So we have a lot, we had a podcast for a little while. So we've done quite a lot. It's rough keeping nonprofits going, though, I'll tell you.
Yes, I know.
And raising money.
It's so much work.
It's so much work.
I had no idea. I mean, like, I was a lawyer and my law firm said, hey, would you like to start a foundation? Because that was something they could offer to me, right? I mean, it's like that was something my friends there could do for me. Yeah. When people are offering whatever they have. And so it was like, I guess, I don't know. Sure. And so it's like, then I had this thing and now what do I do with it? And the path has kind of revealed itself. Mm-hmm. And I really do feel like Molly is part of it always, because I don't think that we would have been able to grow in the way that we have and have attracted, people who come and want to be part of it that I don't even know, It's like a young teenager shows up and's like, hey, I'd like to start a youth board. Could I do that with you? I've raised like all this money and here I am and I'd like to be in charge of that. And it's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
So I do always feel like that. And like I was saying at the beginning of this, I'm so grateful because I didn't realize kind of what I was missing, and I'm 5 years out and I have plenty of friends who have lost children, but like I was missing the coming together with what we're doing, the group of women that, we're kind of alternating at each other's homes. And I didn't have that because of the fact that we were in COVID and online.
Same with me.
So I didn't have any of that. Yeah. And I just didn't, sometimes you don't realize what you're missing until you experience it, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So I'm like, okay, I feel really good. And I feel like I do always just kind of feel like Molly helps to bring the right people, into my orbit. And so I feel really grateful that, that we met. And I know Molly would love it because she was such a fan. She was such a fan. I told you she had everybody convinced that she was cousins with, what's her name? What's Jessie's name? Her real name?
Debbie Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, she was cousins.
No, the other one. What's the blonde one?
Oh, you're talking about Dove Cameron.
Dove Cameron, that's right.
Oh, that's her cousin. Okay.
Oh, she had everybody at the theater believing this. And that she's coming, and
this is funny because actually, I was the one who always did Cameron's fan mail, and it was a lot. And I kind of got our system going, whatever. And so many times we get letters, that it's from a mom saying that my kid is telling everybody in school that he's their cousin. I don't know what it is with that, but they do that.
It's exciting. And she had everybody going with it.
Yeah.
And when they asked me, when is she coming? I was like, wait, what? Who?
Right.
Molly, it's like she could like spin a yarn, you know?
Yeah.
She was dramatic, and she could like fully like get into this, embody this whole story, you know? It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I loved seeing all the tributes to Cameron on his birthday, and like all the great pictures. He had those great freckles.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because there's so much, and I see pictures. I'm like, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that video. Where's that? My cousin posted something yesterday. I'm like, I never saw that, and I was there. Yeah. It was they were playing catchphrase, and he was, you know, describing something, and I'd never seen it. Yeah, and you know, you can. It's really different when they pass, and then you look at it. And I saw my husband sort of in the background, just watching the scene and kind of with this big smile, you know, and you know, seeing pictures that I've never seen. Oh, he was there. He was with that person.
It's all so different. And don't you look? I feel like John and I both do this. It's like, oh, like there I was. Just I didn't realize. Like, you know, it's like John mentioned this recently because Molly was in theater, and he used to take her to this. She was part of this I don't know, group of couple students from different, you know, parts of LA that went together, and they would perform at different theaters around the city. And there was one place that he had to take her to drop her off all the time, and it's in Culver City. And he said, I drove past that theater, and I thought, like, God, I used to just take her there, and I just, it's like. Took it for granted, or it's just like I was just there, just, you know, going about my life, and I just thought I had forever with her. And, you know, it's like I look back at pictures, and you're like, there I was, like
what you would do to be in that picture.
I had no idea, you know, like that
what you would do for 1 minute with your kid again. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God. That's one of those. That's really a tough one. That's a tough one because, you know, I think you know, you remember when they're little and they jump in your bed in the morning and you cuddle and all of that. And now I'm cuddling with my dogs, which is great. But, you know, I miss my babies. Yeah. I miss my babies. Yeah. And you don't take it for granted as much as just time goes so fast. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're on to a next phase and you're in it and you're not thinking about the old phase, you know, and that keeps happening. And even today, you know, but like, then you think about it and you stop and you go, oh my God, time is going so fast. Like, how did I get to be 64 years old?
And none of it's guaranteed, you know? And it's like,
nothing's guaranteed.
Nothing, it's like, you know, you think you're going to go on to all the next phases. And then all of a sudden, no, it's like we're always going to be 12 with Molly, you know, or always 20.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think one of the ways it's changed me is just like, I'm so aware of having like faced my own mortality and then having lost Molly, of just like, nothing's guaranteed. And so I don't know how much time I have. And so I'm just like kind of trying to do everything. And, you know, just sort of like.
Don't you feel though, like for me, I was much more fearful about dying than I am now.
For sure. Yeah.
And now it's because immediately I was like, I want to go where he went.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, I have to go get with him, you know.
Yeah.
And so now I kind of feel like, oh, that's a mole that maybe it's melanoma and who gives a shit? You know, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's, you know, and I welcome that because, you know, I've been sort of somebody who's been more fearful about dying. And so
I agree. Yeah,
definitely. That's a bonus.
That's a little bonus.
That's a bonus. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Got to count them all.
Definitely been times on an airplane I'm like, well, if we all go down, we're all 100%. Going down together and it'll be quick and we'll be with Molly. Like
100%. 100%. I have the same experience because I never used to like flying and now I'm like,
with cancer, whatever. I'm like, okay, I've had that. I don't want that again.
Yeah.
That was
don't want to go that way.
Really prefer not that. But, but
a plane crash. It'll be quick.
That would be fine.
I mean, it's pretty crazy, right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not just me.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I could just talk to you all day. I am so grateful to you for coming and for all the things you're doing to
thank you.
You know, help other people in Cameron's memory. And like I said, I feel very proud that, you know, my kids, like Nate was definitely like, really? Like, Cameron's mom? Like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you.
And
I'm
I
glad that
love our
you met-
group. I think,
Yeah.
I feel like I finally kind of got a group that I can jibe with.
Yes, yes.
I love it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we're
course.
going to include all of the information about the Cameron Boyce Foundation and what
thank you.
people need to know,
Wonderful.
educate themselves.
They go on our
you
website.
know?
They'll learn lots of things about if, newly diagnosed with epilepsy, please take a visit because, you need to be armed with information as much as possible. If you can take anything from our story, that would be it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Libby.
Of course.
Thank you to our audience for joining us today on The Obliterated Place. We will see you next time.